Hello, I'm Dr. Stephen Hassan with another episode of the Influence Continuum. And I am especially looking forward to this interview with Sochil Martin, who is a courageous whistleblower champion in my mind and in the world's mind. Sochil has an incredible story. I should say, before we get into more details, HBO did a three-parter called Unveiled that details a lot about her life growing up in an abusive Mexican, but also international Bible cult, Bible-esque cult. So I'm just going to read a little bit, Sochil, and say you're a Mexican-American woman, and the cult's name is La Luz del Mundo, and it was established in the 20s, and it was kind of a new apostolic reformation type cult where the leader says, I'm an apostle, I speak directly to God, and then he turned it over to his son, So it's been a dynasty of authoritarianism and abuse. And I'll just add that they claim to have 5 million people worldwide. Sometimes these groups exaggerate, but sometimes there are more people than they actually know about who are in it. You were, raised in this, and you were basically groomed at birth. And the sexualizing of your childhood began at the tender age of 9 years old. And ultimately, you were taken as a concubine, as a sacrifice by Sochil's legal guardian, who is also her aunt to the leader. You were 12 years old when you were beginning to dance inappropriate for the leader, and you were essentially used as a slave. And you managed to get out when you turned 30 years old. So this is your family is 4 generations, starting with your great-grandmother, who was brought into the cult in Baja, California, Mexico. And with the help of your beloved husband, Martin, who I've gotten to meet, at least on Zoom, you managed to get out and begin your recovery and do whistleblowing on the group. And the cult leader's in jail. Yay!
Yay!
And we're so glad that he was brought to justice, although everyone, I understand, were very upset that there was a plea deal without talking to survivors, and he pled to and got 16 years. So there was a disappointment about that he only got 16 years, and the cult still is saying he's being persecuted, like Jesus was being persecuted. Yeah. But then we now hear that the U.S. federal government has placed child pornography charges because images were found on his, I guess, laptop or tablet.
iPad.
And so what else? You founded a foundation with you, foundation in 2020, and you're committed to helping to change legislation to help survivors of human child trafficking. And you want to ally yourself with therapists, educators, doctors, scientists, because we want to stop this abuse and we want to help liberate these millions of people who are still under the control. So you're a wife, you're a mother, you're an activist. So, Sochil Martin, welcome to the Influence Continuum. Thank you so much.
My goodness. Thank you, Stephen, for just having this platform available to survivors like myself. And I understand and I know a little bit about your story as well, and the fact that you have created a platform like this and the work that you've done has really opened doors for a lot of the change that we're trying to push through, because in a lot of this along the way I've seen certain avenues where I say, hey, maybe if we go this way, and then here you have Dr. Stephen Hassan, who's already been there and is actually working on this layer. And then you have other activists who are also doing great work. And you say, well, these people are already so many steps ahead. And what is, I guess you would say, irritating sometimes for survivors like myself who are learning and have not had too much time away from a multi-generational, I guess, being brought up in a cult. It's just, it's in my bloodstream, it's in my DNA.
Right.
And when you leave, you really do start from nothing. You have no family, you have no community, you have no sense of self, you don't know really how the world works. And
Yeah.
so having people like yourself and activists like yourself who really have just, broken down those walls, and you're opening these doors, and it really helps us. So honestly, thank you so much. And
Sure. But let's just clarify, because we have lots of people who are second generation and third
mhm,
generation born in authoritarian cults. Let's just clarify that if you leave, your family may still be there, and they are
correct,
taught to shun you because you're evil, because you're leaving the apostle and you're now part of Satan's world, right? It's not you
correct. It's hell,
divorcing
supposedly.
your family. You're saying, hey, this is corrupt and immoral and indecent and criminal, and it's got to be stopped. And they're like, you're possessed by the devil. And, you know,
Correct. That's
how,
how they,
yeah,
that's all we knew, Stephen. I mean, that's really all we knew growing up. If
right,
you are not here, you are you are a disappointment to the family because you are not your cancer, and you are the worst, I guess you would say, for a family member, let's say in the light of the world,
mm,
speaking particularly where I survived, this particular organization at 14 years of age, if you do not get baptized, you're you're left with nothing. Your family literally tells you, you do not come back home. You do not have a home here. So there's no more family, there's no more school, there's no more home, there's no more, I guess you would say, a birthday, there's no more grandparents, there's no more, you don't have, forget community, you have nothing. And since they also make us feel and really get at us if we have friends outside of the community, then you really don't have bonds with outside friendships. So you
right,
even lose friendships even inside of the organization. So you lose everything. So
right,
how does a child at 14 years of age or younger say, hey, you know what? I don't want to belong to this church. I don't want to belong to this belief.
right. It's
Then
psychological imprisonment is
and
what it
physical
is.
and
And
physical
if I
too.
can quote my mentor, Robert J. Lifton, whose books, Thought Reform and the Psychology of Totalism, which was written in 1961, it came out about Chinese communist brainwashing. And that was what was used in my deprogramming back in 1976. The number 8 of the 8 criteria is called dispensing of existence. And he said, if you're in the group, you have a right to exist. And if you leave the group, you have no right to exist, including you have the right to be hurt or harassed or threatened or sued because you don't have the same human rights as everybody
Correct.
who's in the group. And
Right.
it's the opposite of what we now know, as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights from the United Nations, for example.
Absolutely. And then talking about how belonging to someone, that is slavery. And so a child in La Luz del Mundo, or even a human being, a wife, um, they are used as property. But the
Yep.
property belongs to the leader. The property belongs to the apostle, particularly in La Luz del Mundo.
Mm-hmm.
You do not have a say so over your own life.
Yep.
So, and I'm not only speaking for myself, but I would say 95% of all LDM members, all of them, they woke up LDM. It's our patriarchy.
Right.
That's what we are. And the very short percentage of those who said, this is wrong. I smell something wrong. Okay, I got baptized, but I'm out, was because they were not multi-generational. They probably came in 5 years before, and you know what? Nobody was really pushing on them. They would kind of go to church and then not go to church. But
Right.
then you have the multi-generations, or those
Right.
who come in really young in LDM, they stay there and
Yep.
they have their kids there. And maybe right now they might be my age, but they're second generation and they're kids now. Yeah, so it is all very much, if you are not LDM, then you deserve to be destroyed because you are a cancer to this world. And anything that the servant of God or the leadership, our doctrine says will happen to you, it should happen to you because you're a bad person.
Right.
And you mocked God. You're laughing at God after all of the good things he did for you, after everything the servant of God did to you. And it's like they completely wipe out the fact that these people have family. They have a mom and a dad who educated them, informed them, and went to work and beat their brains out
Right.
trying to bring bread to the table and get
Right.
them into school. And they completely strip parents from anything good that they ever did to their kids. And that's what they do. They like alienate you from your own family, so you're left with nothing but the apostle. So if you have a job, it's because of him. If you have health, it's because of him. I mean, and
Yeah,
I'm sure that that's
everything good is because of the cult leader and the cult, and everything that goes wrong is you have sin that you haven't repented of, or you've done something wrong. Uh, but
correct.
but like so many groups, women are second class citizens. They're the
Correct.
property of the husbands, certainly the property of the apostle. If the
Correct.
apostle thinks you're cute, then he's going to make the steps to have you groomed,
Right.
and he uses other former victims to groom the new
Correct.
victims, and they're very,
Sometimes your own
very young.
parents.
Their own
Sometimes your own
parents.
parents. And that
Yeah,
happens a
it's
lot.
so disgusting and horrible. I'm so sorry to hear that. I did want to just quickly comment that I interviewed Faith Jones, who was raised in the Children of God cult, which
Okay.
was another sex
Yes.
abuse cult by a pedophile, Moses David, who claimed to be the
Mm.
prophet. And she became an attorney, and she did a TED talk, and she has a book called "I Own Me,"
I own
and
me.
she
Oh, I love that.
is asserting property rights law and contract law around women and children that
Ah,
should be able to say you don't have a right to violate my body, like I own me. And it's a
absolutely.
beautiful model. And
Absolutely.
you should check her out. I'll be happy to introduce you
Yes,
to her.
please. I think we could
And
do amazing work when all of us who are survivors of being stripped off of our human right of being free, just
right,
being free, being born free, and living a free life when you're a child. And I do believe that having these type of groups, Stephen, and I'm sure that you probably spoke with her about this, is that in multi-generational groups like this, is that when you're born into this type of organization like La Luz del Mundo, is that you not only as a child don't have a say so, you don't, not only in your house and culturally speaking, especially
yep,
in like Hispanic households, but more so in a religious sense. You do as I say, and it's not so much as in parents should be those who guide a child on how to live overall in your wellness, right? That's what a
right.
parent is there for. I'm a mother of an 11-year-old little girl who certainly has a mind of her own, and I think I've introduced you to her, and she certainly has a mind of her own. But when you're in groups like this, particularly my legal guardian who raised me since I was a baby, she was my mom. So
Mm-hmm.
anything she said was a do, and I had to absolutely follow what my mom said, but it was always very much attached to that belief of la luz del mundo. So I was
Mm-hmm.
always, since I was a little baby girl, I always knew that I belonged to him. There were no
Yeah.
boundaries to
Right.
him in my, because
Right.
there were no boundaries to her
Yeah.
as also a survivor herself. Even though she doesn't see it that way, they think it's a blessing. And she's not a, her true self is not a Stephen, she
Right.
raised me and my four half brothers. She was
Mm-hmm.
21. She was my aunt. Like, a bad person doesn't do that.
Mm.
I mean, and my grandparents, other aunts and uncles, they wanted nothing to do with this. They didn't want to take care of it. Social service, the church, nothing. They completely alienated
Hmm.
my mom. My biological mother had her to be the worst, as a traitor to the apostle. She didn't appreciate the blessings she had after everything that they were doing to her. And she was a
Mm-hmm.
child, and her life was lost to drugs and alcohol, and
Mm.
they completely tear up this family, and they still sort of wipe their hands and say, I have nothing to do with that. Their family, that's their problem. And they take no responsibility for the lives and the families that they destroy with the culture, with
Right.
that culture that they built from
A
from our
cult.
birth.
Sure.
A
Yes.
cult.
Cult.
Sure, yes.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I just, what I want to convey to our listeners about your story is also just that it's another example of abuse by religious authority figures who claim to speak to God and claim to be the greatest person on earth, and no other churches are legitimate, only theirs, and the control of behavior and information and thoughts and emotions to
Correct.
make a pseudo identity in the image of the group, and
Correct.
you're trained to be obedient. Wasn't there corporal punishment also?
Yeah, so
Spanking and
there were much so. So everything, like you mentioned, is based on the Bible. That everything that we is based on the Bible, but the apostle's word comes before the Bible.
yeah,
So he will. All the Bible means nothing without the apostle of Jesus Christ. God is nothing to us without the apostle of Jesus Christ, and Jesus Christ Himself is nothing to us without him. He ties it
right,
all. So he,
right,
without if we had the Bible, so all of this God and Jesus Christ in the Bible, without the apostle, it means nothing. So our
right.
basis of understanding how you must scold a child from the moment that they are born, and it's in Spanish. That's how I was raised. I was on Spanish. So it's a
Sure.
Mexican American church, and they would tell us, instruye a tu hijo desde su infancia para que cuando sea grande no se desvíe. So since they're children, construct them right, lead them right, so that when they're older, they won't, they won't
They won't
misshape.
think for
Yeah,
themselves.
exactly. So they
Right.
use that to their benefit, and that's
Yeah.
what they do with all of these like Bible quotes, and many of them were used to sexually exploit us, to for labor trafficking. Oh my God, labor trafficking. It's like
Right.
horrible, right? As well as obviously sexual exploitation. So this is all happening, but in religious organizations that are cults like La Luz del Mundo, they use the Bible so professionally. They're
Well,
so
they cherry pick verses, they ignore other verses. And
correct,
as you said, like all Bible cults, the group supersedes the scripture. And you
correct.
can't understand the scripture or have a direct relationship with Jesus without the group or without the leader. So that's the trickery and the mind games that they do.
And that's why you feel so beguiled. You feel. And then it doesn't help when others who don't know what a cult is, because they never lived it, because ignorance, and so because they say
Right.
that, they say we're stupid. How could we be so stupid? And then when I say, if they say, oh, but you're multi-generational, so I guess I get you. And it's like, no, 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 wait, I'm sorry. You're not understanding that, yes, there are layers of it, but when they trick you, they know what they're doing when they
Mm.
are tricking you through the way that they persuade you, and the way that this just like professional set of just, it's much more than a doctrine. I think that what they really have, it's like they should have some sort of doctorate degree. I'm not sure if they pull these psychopaths
Well,
aside.
it's behavioral conditioning, and from my point of view and others, it's they victimize you and they teach you how to victimize others
Mm-hmm.
because it was done to you, and you're grateful because it brought you to salvation.
Correct.
So you need to pass it on to other people. And again, there's no reality testing because the outside world is looked at as evil and satanic and fallen. And of course, Judgment Day is going to come,
Correct.
and you better be in good standing. And regarding the labor trafficking, this is abused so much, where people are spending hours and hours making buildings
Correct.
and doing other things that the church should be using their many millions of dollars to pay
Correct.
laborers to build the buildings.
Insurance
So,
with their members. I mean, these are children who are either being sexually assaulted, or they go missing,
mm-hmm,
or during construction sites, people die.
yeah,
And it's terrible, because again, you lose a mother, you lose a father, a mother a mother who was not like the woman who saw as a mother who took me. Talking about other mothers who completely, some of the Jane Does I remember, and other Jane Does who are also in the Mexican federal case, or other Jane Does who have spoken up, but are not on any of the media platforms, but have with authorities. These Jane Does all over the world. We're talking thousands of women
right,
and men who have been assaulted and aggravated in so many different ways. And now they're
yeah,
so angry because they're seeing how they were so lied to, and they were beguiled, and they said, you used my body, and you used my mind, you used my organs, you used my name, you used my life, all for a lie. You
mm-hmm,
said you were going to
yeah,
use my hands every time we had to. And this is not just me. I know many people in LDM who, and some who have reached out, but most who are just out there and talking about it. Like, I had to help build a temple with my hands when my wife had just had a baby. We had nowhere to live. But
right,
and so you have all of these circumstances of people now who have worked because they were told that that was to make a change in community and to help bring people, so that they would somehow not only be saved, but that they would live healthy, and that they would live
right.
longer, and that they would be smarter, that they would be more educated in a sense. So they would somehow make you feel special, but at the same time,
It's always,
yeah. So they're so great at how to lie. They're just so great at hoodwinking people. And that's what needs to
yep.
stop.
Yep. And I want to add in, of course, that there's typically with a group like this, they sidle up to
Mm-hmm.
politicians and want to ingratiate themselves and maybe donate money to help the politician get elected, and offer to have members do electioneering to get votes, as well as be told that they should vote for a specific politician. Is that the case with
LDM.
Luz del Mundo?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
you know what? It's interesting you say that, because even after all of the even just the recent federal indictment and the fact that in Mexico
Yep.
it has been very, very clear that there is a federal investigation by the Federal Department of Justice. The IRS was after them. They actually froze their accounts. It's been everywhere. And so even with all of these documentaries releasing all this information out there now on LDM that has been unveiled, even so, politically, they have never been stronger. And then you have people
Hmm.
like my husband, Shireen, who was in politics and he was in that area of the church. And now he's sort of combating it on that end and calls them out and is consistently on all of these like news networks tell them like there is no division between church and state really when there is corruption.
Right.
And he talks about it and really just sort of puts himself on the line on that end, but they somehow their numbers in politics just keep growing like little, bichos, and
Yeah.
and it's
Well,
because of
yeah,
corruption.
because power and corruption, and the children of God would send women to seduce politicians, literally have sex with them so that they'll do favors or look the other way if there were child abuse
Yeah,
charges being leveled by
that
ex-members and
happened in
such.
LDM too, by the way. Yes, the
Interesting.
some of the women
I'm
that were
not
the apostles.
surprised.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I guess I also want to just come back to your story because you're an extraordinary woman. You have a lot of strength, and it's very. I've been doing this work for 47 years, and there's not a lot of us. I can count, maybe on 3 sets of hands that I've met over 47 years who stood up to a multi-million or billion-dollar group and said, "You're a fraud."
yeah.
And you're doing brainwashing and mind control, and you're abusing people.
And I didn't know
And
that.
kudos
But I
to.
didn't know that. You see, Stephen, so it's so important that we work together as a community, as
Mm,
survivors.
mm,
If you are advocating in this end, it's like, know that you're not alone. If you're listening to this in Mexico, if you're in any part of Latin America, that's we're also trying to get in over there, and you have like, Dr. Stephen helping us, and so that's awesome. But no, you're not alone. And you see, Stephen, I didn't know a lot of this stuff. I didn't know what a cult was.
uh,
If not, I had seen that documentary that Leah Remini worked with. I believe it was Alex Gibney. I'm not sure, but and the
Scientology,
aftermath.
Leah
Yes,
Remini.
and
Yeah.
so I was like, oh my
Yes.
god. I was like, I had already left, but I didn't know the word to connect. I remember LDM telling us about we're not a cult, we're not a cult, we're not a cult. So I'm like, yeah, we're not a cult. But then I'm seeing this
Right.
documentary out of the blue just because it popped up, and I was like, oh, that's what is that? And I turned it on and I pressed play, and I could not believe it. I'm like, OMG, I think I was in a cult. I think I was in a cult. And then I
Yeah.
start learning through your work and I've read up on Dr. Jaja Lilich. I've just read I've
Hmm.
understood now how they practice. And it's so interesting because I really, when I learned what human trafficking was, what that word was, what sexual assault was,
Mm,
I didn't
mm,
know what it was. I
right.
kind of knew what molesting was. I didn't know a lot of the words, the definitions to it. I was ignorant. So all of this
Of
stuff was,
course, you don't know what you don't know.
this stuff was
It's just
happening
human
to me
nature.
my whole
Of
life.
course.
And there was not a day, Stephen, when I was a little girl and I would think about my life ending, or I would imagine myself in scenarios. What would happen if I lived, maybe under that tree and I didn't bother anybody. And it would always come back to me how so many things that were going on in LDM and in my church and then in Berea and then all of these things that were happening in my life. And I just was always like, what if I just ended my life today? And then I'd go back and I'd be like, oh my God, no, the apostle of Jesus Christ, like, no, he needs me. And he wouldn't. So all of this, all of the
Yeah,
fear,
you were miserable. You were even
it was
thinking
the
about ending
fear
your
that
life.
something could happen to me and I would deserve
Sure.
it. And then much more than when you're a mother and you have a child, all of the
Yeah.
responsibility just doubles. So you're always on flight or fight risk, and you don't even know
Mm.
what the terminology of all of this anxiety
Yep.
that you have, and depression and pain
Yep.
and fear, like emotions,
Yep.
human emotions that we're so detached from a very
Yep.
young life. And we don't know how to dress when we get out. We don't know how to feel. And it's
Yep.
so
Yeah,
dangerous.
because everything's external to the cult. Your identity is merged. Your pseudo identity is an extension of the cult. So then you get out and it's like, well, who am
Mm-hmm.
I and what do I believe now? Like and you don't know what's normal. You don't know what's healthy. But when you commented about seeing the Leah Remini special, I was on that show
Yes,
actually
I
myself
remember.
as a guest. But the pattern when I'm teaching people how to help loved ones who are currently in a cult is you don't attack the leader, the doctrine, or the group directly because the person gets
Correct.
defensive, feels like you're persecuting them. But you talk to them about another
Mm-hmm.
group, another situation, ask their opinion. Like, what do you think about Scientology? Watch this with me. Tell me what you think. And then you're watching it and you're going, wait a minute, this is like a parallel to what I'm experiencing. Different words, different leaders. It's not a Bible cult, but behavior control, information
Yeah,
control, thought control,
yeah.
emotional control, cutting off from family and friends if you disobey the
Because they
rules.
don't teach you
Um,
what they when you're listening to it, and they tell you that it's a cult. And I would remember when they would say that they were saying that we were cults. First of all, I didn't know what a cult was, even when I was in. So I'm like,
right,
yeah, that sounds creepy. And we're not like the KKK, and we're not like creeps that are hiding in basements. And like, no, we're not that. But then we would hear about Legionarios de Cristo, and oh, they're a cult though. I didn't even know what a cult was, but I'm like, yeah, that they're creepy and weird, and they say that they have the truth of God. And no, only the apostle of Jesus Christ has the truth of God, and only we have
right,
the real truth. So you don't really know how that human side of you
right,
would even understand what that is. We don't know how to think
right.
like humans to a
Right.
point.
No, my listeners will resonate with this 1,000%. And the critical thing, obviously, from my work is, realizing that that was an abnormal environment. It's not
Absolutely
healthy.
not.
And now you get to rewire your own brain, decide what you
Yes, and it's
believe.
so hard.
You have real
Yeah,
friends who care about you, and it's not about obedience to a doctrine or fear based or
yeah,
shame based or guilt based. And it's work to figure out, like, who am I? And I say, try some different things out.
yeah.
Like, as a therapist, I'll say, when do you feel the most you, is one of my favorite
Oh,
questions that I was taught by one of my teachers. And people will be like, when I'm playing guitar, or when I'm surfing, when I'm teaching young children. And I'm like, that's a good start
that's
point. If
beautiful.
that's
Oh my goodness.
when you feel, and people do have moments of reference points where they just truly are grateful to be
I've never
alive.
heard that question
And
before, and
and
it's so healing. It is so
great.
healing.
Well, there's more you can flesh out on that. But the other thing is, sometimes people will say to me when they're born in a cult, they're like, I don't know how to be a person. I'm like, well, have you read any books? Oh yeah, I read all the time. I'm like, well, are there any characters in the books that you really admire, or attributes of
Mm-hmm.
characters in the books, or attributes of characters in movies that you've seen? Well, yeah, come to think of it, I really like, this person's really genuine and compassionate, or this person's really funny. This person, is really creative. I'm like, try that on. See how that feels to be a creative person. Try that one on. Because we don't have to be set in stone. In fact, human beings adapt and grow. And it's good to change your mind
Yeah.
and expand your beliefs and your perspectives. It's being alive.
And having your own personality, just being if they were to give us, if they would have given us the human right, and just particularly the people who have grown up in, let's say, LDM, in my personal circumstance, I was taken, that side of my personality, that side of my personality was taken away, because I'm a big tomboy at heart.
Well, it was suppressed.
Or suppressed, yes.
It was
and
suppressed.
Always through the Bible. That's not what the Bible says, and that's not what the Apostle Jesus Christ says. And especially if you're in this group, in the group that we had as concubines, you had to have a particular size, and you had to look a particular way and act a certain way. I was going to say a perfect way, but we had to be perfect because we were his, and we were being prepared for him. Sort of like with Rebecca. I'm sorry, not with Rebecca. With Esther, when her name is changed to Hadassah, but Esther, she is prepared as well as all the concubines for a whole year to be just taken before the king. And in our circumstance, they were preparing us. And so we had to act a certain way and not speak to anybody, even within the community. Your own
information control.
So
you have levels.
There was like a cult inside of the cult. And so with the unconditionals of vow. And so in this particular circumstance, I was a big tomboy, Stephen. I was a big tomboy. I grew up with just brothers, cousins who were all boys. My only two female cousins were all the way in San Francisco, and and then in San Jose, like very, very far away. And I was a big tomboy, and I wasn't allowed to be a tomboy. I wasn't allowed to be masculine. And then we had to wear long skirts. I didn't want to have my sweet 14. You have your quinceañeras and your bat mitzvahs. In LDM, it was your 14. And I didn't want a big fancy dress. Like, I didn't want it. And all of the girls who were dressed in pretty different colors, my aunt chose all of that. So my mom was the one behind all of the pretty stuff. And I didn't want any of it because it wasn't it wasn't interesting to me. I wanted to go play baseball. Right. I wanted to be on the soccer team.
Yeah, you want to wear jeans and hang out.
I wanted to wear big t-shirts, and I wanted to wear hats. And she didn't buy me like anything that was boyish. So now that I can, and I leave, and I'm like, oh my God. So I went through my shopping spurt at one point where I was just only buying boy clothes because I felt more comfortable. And then I'm like, but I also like dresses, and I think dresses are pretty. But then I go back and I'm like, no, because being sexy is gross. And it's like, it's a trigger to me, because if I look pretty, then I just go back to, it's bad. Like, I'm the problem. It was my fault. That's how I see it. And it's just because that's when they take you, they take you to this place where they separate you from a certain other group, and then they make you feel like you can be this way, you can be sexy this way, but only for him. And it doesn't matter how, there's no boundaries for him. So even your person is being used against you as a weapon. And even in that sense.
Yes. So let me just share that, in the recovery work that I do with ex-members, a lot of the initial healing, and I think you've been out for about 7 years now, is that correct? So it's still relatively young, because I think you're 37, so you have 30 years of programming and 7 years of discovering what is real and what's reality. It will get better in time. But it's very normal to be reactive. So, for example, in the Moonies, you couldn't wear a beard. So I grew a beard, right? Because I couldn't do it. I couldn't wear long hair. I grew it long.
Love it.
couldn't kiss women. You know, Satan was invading me if I kissed a woman. But if I thought back, and I was only in 2.5 years, if I thought back, I loved kissing women.
Yeah.
But it was like, kiss women. But then finally, it was like, the real me liked to
Yeah.
kiss women. I'm going to force
Yeah.
myself to enjoy
I
it.
see.
It didn't take that long to enjoy it again, but I had to get the indoctrination out of my head that it was evil.
That's so.
You know what I mean? So the notion of, I don't want to wear dresses because they made me wear dresses
Right.
when I didn't
That's
want to
me.
wear dresses. You want to figure out not just reactivity to them, but also, how do I feel? Would I like to try this dress on or
Right.
not? And etc. And you can go through different phases where you only
Yeah.
wear jeans, or you know, and you get to choose. That's
Even
what's
like
so
cutting my
beautiful.
hair, we couldn't cut our hair, so it always had to be a certain length. If it was above a certain, just above a certain length, then you'd get called out. Like the sisters would call you to the back, and as an unconditional avowal, that starts in with your mother who's grooming you. She's essentially your groomer,
Yeah.
right? Your first groomer. And so I didn't have to worry about that ever, because she would never let me leave the house with pants, even because we had to wear long skirts and cover our bodies. And my hair had to be a certain length.
Right.
And the makeup and dyeing your hair and earrings. Oh, a no in LDN. First thing I did, chopped my
Yeah.
hair off, wore a mini skirt, and put on earrings, is like the first thing I did. So
Rock and roll. That's all. You know, this is so healthy and normal. So anyone listening to this, think about things that you would like to do that the group would never allow you to do. And, you know, you can,
yeah.
check it out, try it on. So I'd like to shift, if I may, to the fact that there are all these people still stuck in mind control in this cult. And I know a lot of your energy is committed to what can we do to help wake, these millions of people up. And talk about, because I know you're with a community of survivors, and many of them also have family members and friends still
Correct.
in the
And
cult.
uh, with us survivors of particularly La Luz del Mundo, we've understood, especially after a certain generation, you know that your parents are
Mm-hmm.
not going to get out. Like, you know, your family's never going to get out. And it's a very sad reality. And then you have those particular miracles, I guess you would call. I don't know. I have never used that term. Oh my God. But those trigger. Yeah,
Miracles. No, but I want to come back.
absolutely.
Can I interrupt you for a second? So when you said no, they know their parents will
Yeah.
never get out, I challenge that, because nobody knows the
Let's help my
future.
aunt. Let's start with
And
my aunt, my mom.
but I mean, the thing is you want to protect yourself from having unrealistic expectations. So it's okay to protect yourself by not setting the expectation that they're definitely going to leave. But you don't know 100%, because we haven't had the future yet, that they're not going to leave. You don't know what you don't know. And my living philosophy, and you can say, Steve, you're an idealist, but my philosophy is, deep down inside,
Yeah,
people want to be free, and they don't like to be exploited and abused and
correct.
lied to. And that I personally believe in God, and you never know that people might have an experience or a set of experiences or in the group that turn them off to the group,
The,
or positive experiences with non-believers on the outside that get them going, wait a minute, I should not be having a positive experience with this
yeah.
person, and I'm falling in love with them, for
And I think that
example.
you have the layers of these
So,
certain, for example, generations, where some of the maybe first generation or even second generation, let's say in LDM, would be open to like maybe marrying outside of LDM or letting yourself go there, or not, so that's
Yep.
what, but for example, my mom, particularly the woman who raised me, my legal guardian, the reason why I think she would never, ever, ever be able to get out is because I think that she it's just so many generations in where she knows nothing else beyond that. And and
She
so
knows
in
you.
that sense, I always remember, for example, Catherine Oxenberg's fight to help her daughter, right? India, my friend,
India
yeah,
Oxenberg
from the
from
Nexium cult. And
Nexium.
so
Uh-huh.
I always go back, I'm like, what if I tried to do that with my mom? She was my mom. And I don't have a
Yeah.
daughter who's stuck in there, and although I know she did terrible things, my mom or my aunt, I know that that's not her. That's not her true self.
Right.
Her true self
Right.
chose as a very young woman who had just gotten out of the mission of LDM, serving for the apostle, and all of these years of abuse that she still does not see as abuse. She doesn't see it. She leaves and she sees 5 vulnerable children because her sister is can no longer take care of them. And here she comes, and
Right.
she saves us. Like I mean, I would not be here without. I would not be alive if not for her. Or who knows what would have happened in my life. But
Mm.
in the essence, like, who does that? Only a true, good-hearted person. And other things that,
You're proving my
and so
point, though.
hope. But is it going to take the? But is
So
it going to
never
take the
say never.
criminal? Unfortunately, there are a lot of crimes that she has participated in. And so, does it take the jail? Is it going to
Yeah.
have to take jail? That's what's sad.
I don't know. I honestly don't know. But, for me, my counsel with anybody who's exited a group and family is still in is focus on your
Yeah,
own recovery first, because you have an obligation to yourself. Because when you're in a mind control group, you're taught to surrender yourself to the group because you think you're surrendering it to God. It's not selfish to think about yourself and get
correct.
yourself grounded. You're married with children, so you have obligations to your husband and
Yeah,
your children also. But my counsel is think about things that you could do that's within your power to do to at least reach out or plant a seed or just say, I miss you and I love you. And I'd love to sit down and talk with you someday. She may say, never, you're terrible. But the real her, if she feels your heart, because you're very, your heart's very true. Your heart's a very, very, very good-hearted person. I feel it. Um, Love is stronger than mind control. And to just say, I miss you and I love you and I'd love to just hug you. She can say, yeah, but you betrayed, the apostle. And you're like, I still miss you and I love you.
right.
Right. And that's what's within your power to do. And it's up to her and it's up to God and the good part of her how she handles that. And she may say, I want to leave, but I'm afraid I might go to jail. But she needs to have access to someone
Right.
on the outside to say, I'm thinking of
Correct.
leaving, but what about my crimes? And you go,
Yeah.
we'll get you a
Yeah.
lawyer and we can
Right.
we can figure this
Absolutely.
out together.
Yes.
People need an exit strategy. And all I can say is you never know what you don't know. And there could be somebody walking up to her on the street from an ex-member of the
Mhm.
Jehovah's Witnesses who smiles and helps her lift her grocery packages and says a few words about how happy they are out of the watchtower,
Yeah.
and she might say, what do you mean? And then, well, I was born and raised in this group and I thought that we alone were doing God's will on earth. And and it could plant some seeds.
Yeah.
You never know. And that's why I'm on this platform saying we former members who've gotten free, we can help others. We don't have to sacrifice ourselves and our needs to help others, but along the way, we can plant the seed here, we can be kind here, and the rest, you know, other people can help, right? So you never know. And I think that this cult leader is going to be in jail for a very, very long time. And that's going to put a lot of pressure on the top leadership. Are we in it for the money and the
Yeah.
power? You know, or, you know, because now we know that he actually did these crimes. You know, what we're telling the members is not true. And by the way, there's a big turnover rate in the PR departments of
Correct.
cults. I don't know if you've ever heard anybody tell you this, but
LDS did
this is what I've
it.
observed over 5 decades because
Yeah.
they have access. Or people who attend legal hearings, they're listening to the testimonies, but then they hear the official word, oh, this is persecution, there's no evidence, but they've listened to all the evidence. So it's what we call cognitive dissonance between their real self and their cult self. And people can leave. But again, they need to know there's a place they can go to or someone that they can stay with and won't judge them and tell
Right.
them they were stupid for staying in and those types of things. It makes me crazy when I hear the average person say, well, you chose to be in the cult and you deserve it because you're
Yeah.
stupid. And I'm like, well, I do have 2
Yeah.
masters and a PhD, but you know, you don't
It
know
has
what you don't
absolutely
know.
nothing to
You
do
know
with
what?
that.
No.
It's like telling a person, well, you know, you deserved for somebody to break into the bank and hold you guys hostage. Like, you know what I mean? You deserved it because you decided to go to the bank, girl. Like, you know, it's
Right. Or the other magical thing that makes me crazy is the belief that there's no such thing as victims. And if you get mugged, you created that reality that someone was going to rob you and beat you. And it's like, no,
yeah,
you were just in the wrong
exactly.
place at the wrong
Yeah,
time
like
and you
you got
were
hacked.
unlucky,
Well, it's your fault
you
because you
know?
have your Wi-Fi on. That's why. It's like, oh, really? Okay, well, they stole, you know, you lost your wallet and now they took your social security number. It's like, yeah, it's your fault because you lost your wallet. Like, why would you lose your wallet? So it's like the people are always looking for ways to um, blame the victim, and that
Blame
that
the
that
victim.
happened because it's your fault. And
Yeah.
now there are things taking responsibility for, as in, let's say I dropped my wallet. Well, I should be more careful, but accidents do happen. And if somebody hacks you, hey, you
Yep.
know what, it is illegal because they should not be in your personal privacy to begin with. And so
1,000%.
but
Yeah, no, 1,000%. But you know, I want to just call out the evils of. Well, I'm going to use Lifton again for this point. Back to the 8 criteria of brainwashing from Chinese Communist, a book by Lifton. It's called Demand for Purity is one of the 8, and to use a lay term, it's perfectionism. Thinking humans can be perfect
mm-hmm.
is erroneous. No human is perfect. And to expect you to be perfect, to know
Yeah,
every single thing, what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do, and live
it's not
perfectly,
real.
it
Yeah,
just ain't real.
that's we're
We're humans. Let's
yeah,
have a learning experience. Okay, I didn't know that you do the X, Y, and Z. Now I know
right.
better. I
Because we're
won't do that one
feelers.
again.
Yeah, we're
I'll make a new
feelers, and
mistake.
we occasionally think, right? And you know, you
Right,
have your brilliant people who just think
right.
more, but it's in their DNA. And then you have those who have studied and have learned, and but you know, but we go according to how we feel, and I do believe that all of these these church, like LDM, for example, they sell this like this perfect afterlife. And if you want this perfect, no harm will come to you. You will not be burned for all eternity. You're going to live safely. And so all of this stuff that they sell through on your in your afterlife, and then your life. If you're here, you won't be in a car accident. You're not going to get sick. You're gonna like nothing's going to happen to your kids. You're going to have a job, and none of this is going to happen to you. So you're always like trying to live a life that you're like tiptoeing on all of these like glasses, like
Right.
glass, like broken shells, right? Like eggshells. And it's like you're so scared that
Yep.
you're going to, and this is
Yep.
just humanity. But there are so many types of cults out there. But I'm talking
Yep.
about particularly La Luz del Mundo, right? That cult side of it. And
Right.
so when you leave, you're just like, well, who do I go? Who's going to tell me now what I should dress like, or what I should talk like, or how am I going to go to heaven now? How do I know if I'm living my life well? How do I know if that's the music
Right.
that is okay to listen to? Is dressing like this okay? Am I going wrong? Am I being maybe caught up into discrimination and I'm going too much against the grind? Like always thinking about what everybody else is going to be thinking because we're so afraid.
Yeah.
Afraid.
Well, it's the external locus of control programming from being in a
Yeah.
cult. You can't trust your own ability to discern, so you're always looking for someone to tell you. I wasn't that way before the Moonies, but that was my
Mm-hmm.
Moonie self. And then when I got out, I was still looking for someone to tell me what to
Right.
do. And it took me a while
Correct.
to go back in my mind because I wasn't born and raised in a cult. I had a reference
Yeah.
point to go back and go, wait a minute, I used to
Yeah.
make decisions. And so I know that I have the capacity to do it, but it still was like, working out and getting muscles to be strong
Yeah.
again. Of let me push myself instead of looking for someone to tell me what to do. Let me pose the question. What do I think I should do? What's this option like? What's good about it? What's bad about it? What's this option like? What's good about it? What's bad about it? Which one is better? Which is short term? Which is long term? So there are decision making strategies people can learn,
Yeah.
and you adapt a strategy to the circumstance and the timing of the moment. Because some decisions you have weeks to make, and some you have to make really quickly.
Correct.
And you only can do the best decision based on the information and experiences you have at that moment.
Correct.
You do a lot of good guesses.
Correct. And I mean, like we all grew up differently, obviously, different lives, different cultures, different upbringings. And for example, in multi-generational cults like La Luz del Mundo, we also were being brought up in different households and different circumstances and different situations. But ultimately, there was a particular hour of the day where we were all being taught the same thing over and over again. So our parents and our grandparents, that was our reality. That was our truth. That was the law. That was
Mm.
everything. So,
Yeah.
interestingly enough, with me and some of my friends that you happened to meet on the workshop that you so awesomely hosted and did for us,
Mm.
so many of them took so much help. It just really, really they took so much from it, and the bite model, and it was so healing because just understanding and
Mm.
telling yourself, "Hey, Sochil, you know what? You're not crazy. Like it's real. Like the trauma is real,
Hardly.
girl. Like you should
Yeah.
be very, very proud of yourself for surviving that. And so should all of you. So particularly, and I'm sure you'll remember
Yes.
him, Roberto Guillen. He's a very strong man. He's the big guy who is, and so he started,
Yeah.
you were talking and he's asking you these questions and I'm listening to him and he's crying. And he had
Mm.
cried, uh, I think the night before when we were going over sort of like the session,
Mm.
and he just was he wanted to just open up, and there was so much he wanted to talk to, but he had left like 20 years ago, but he kept it bottled up inside of all of the
Right.
culture and all of the trauma that had built up since he was very young, and others who were acting the same way since when you're born. And it's like, we all know we were going through it and we were suffering through it,
Yep.
but nobody really talks about the gruesome sides of it. So we kind of like laugh at those points, and we're like, we'll make fun of it, like the songs that we sang that were really creepy, and then we'll like laugh it
Yeah.
out. And then you have those moments where somebody will really just break down. And
Yeah.
those are the moments that
So
really get to you.
yeah, and it's never too late to heal. And you make another really important point for my listeners, and that is you can physically leave a cult, but it doesn't mean that you're healed. And you can leave things in a closet in your mind or bottled up. 20 years later, you have feel safe and you have words to be able to explain what happened, and you're with supportive people, you can share and let feelings out.
Correct.
And it's a beautiful thing, and it's something that motivates me to this day, because I know how much I suffered
Yeah.
when I got out. I was a basket case. You would not
Mm,
recognize me, I can assure you. I was so ashamed and embarrassed and confused and depressed, and I felt like my life was, meaningless and
mm-hmm.
dirty. And then I had all this programmed crap in my head that I was betraying God, and it was a mess. I was lucky. I have a family and friends
Mm-hmm.
who love me and who are like, "Welcome
Mm.
home. We missed
Oh,
you."
yeah.
My next door neighbor baked chocolate chip
Oh,
cookies
that's
and brought them
beautiful.
over and said, "Welcome
If there are
home."
any LDM, you know, survivors out there who have family, bake chocolate chip cookies for them
I'm
when they
telling
come home.
you, it's an act of love, but it's something about the smell, the
Oh,
taste, and it's just the gesture. I had another friend who like whipped out a letter that I had written to him after I tried to recruit him, and he didn't join. And I was like, "Lenny, you're going to be
oh,
burning with demons all over you, Lenny." And she whips out this letter, and he's like, "Remember writing this to me? This really hurt." And I'm reading it and I'm feeling ashamed and embarrassed and guilty. It was the worst thing he could have
yes,
done
I
to help
understand
me
you. Yes.
recover. But he needed to vent because we were best
Yeah.
friends. And I did not
Yeah.
understand how traumatizing I was by being in a
I get
cult
it.
to all my family
I
and
have
friends.
I
They were
have
like,
survivors from
yeah,
LDM who do the same thing to me when they meet me, and or acquaintances, but they'll meet me and they'll say, Sochil, I am so sorry, but I spoke the worst things about you when I found out that you were speaking up about this. I spread these horrible rumors about you. And I'm like, I understand that's like, that's not even you. Like, I get you. I want to know the person who's in front of me now. Like, the other people, that other person,
right.
I don't
No,
know who that
exactly.
person is. Like,
No, if they're apologizing because they did bad things, I remember being at a ex-Scientology party, and a woman came over and said, "I want to apologize to you." I said, "Yeah," and she said, "Well, I was ordered to go through all your garbage cans to find
yeah,
information that we could use against you, or I was picketing your office in a Nazi uniform, saying, 'Please join Steve Hassan in his crusade against
yeah.
religion.'" And I'm like, "Thank you for telling me that. And it means a lot to me that you're
Yeah, I mean,
apologizing,
Stephen, LDM
you know?
had a fake victim go and give a statement to the Mexican authorities so that they could know who the agent was who had the case. And that
I see.
when I found out about all of this person was saying all of the things that they were organizing to potentially eliminate, not potentially, they wanted to kill both my husband and I. So they had plans that they had made out on how to hurt and exterminate us essentially. So when these people are
Yeah.
saying, they're crying and they're saying like, I am so sorry. Like after all of that stuff that happened to you, like still I was helping so that this would happen to you and your family and my daughter.
Right.
And so I'm like, wow, like they just really try to make their own monsters. Like, and, but then you have these
Yeah.
beautiful people who say, no, like they're fighting against it and they're fighting against it. They don't want to be that person. They don't want to be the bully. They
Of
don't want to be the
course.
murderer. They don't want to be that
Of
hitman.
course.
They don't deep down inside want to hurt them. They just,
Most people
yeah,
are
most people
good.
are good.
Most people are good. There's a few predators, there's a few malignant narcissists, but most people are good. And,
They're being influenced.
people can be turned to do evil things. And I'll just name
Correct.
terrorists who want to kill civilians because they are the wrong color or the wrong religion or the wrong this or the wrong that. That's all mind control conditioning, in my
Correct.
opinion.
And that's why it's so dangerous.
And
That's why we have to make
yep,
change in legislation, and we need to really get this to the health. I mean, this is real safety and health.
yeah, it's
It's
a
a
public health
public health emergency.
emergency.
Like it's being done by the
Yep,
masses. It's happening. It's happening more just right down the street. You don't even know it. And one out of five girls is already being trafficked, and it most likely will be in organizations like this. And yeah,
yeah.
so
Religious cult trafficking. And just because it's got religious exemption doesn't mean they can do criminal acts. And that's where
change
we need to update the law and not give exemptions just because somebody says this is a religion, so we don't have to pay our laborers
exactly,
that are working slave hours and don't have health insurance.
exactly.
So, Sochil Martin, thank you. With You Foundation, we will put a blog, we will put
Thank you.
links so people can donate and network with you. And we're talking about helping to do an updated edition of Combating
Yes.
in Spanish. And when, with your help, we are already working on an updated influence continuum and bite model in
I'd rather them
Spanish to
support
get the word out.
this project as opposed to with you right now. I think that this is where we really need to focus on.
We're
Yeah,
working
because we're
together
working
on
together
this
on this, and
because,
your work definitely needs to
yeah,
come in Spanish now. All of it just needs to be translated, and it is helping us a lot with this law that we're trying to get passed in Mexico. It's a federal law, as you're so awesomely.
it'd be
Yeah,
wonderful.
let's get high control. I mean, that's where the wording is off. Like, how we need people like yourself who's just been studying this for so long. You really know the science behind it and the research and the analytics and the laws that we have now are are just putting their own citizens at risk because we have evolved
Yeah.
and time has evolved and these particular cultures have
Yep.
evolved and laws have to
Yeah.
evolve and AI is here
Exactly.
and people like Nason Joaquin and
Yep.
let's say La Luz del Mundo or the Moonies, Nixium, like give them artificial intelligence and they can rule the world. And it is extremely dangerous. And it's, I mean, it's here and nobody's seeing it. So,
Yeah. Dictators have AI access,
yeah.
unfortunately. So the issue is it's your mind. You should control it. Become an educated
Yes.
consumer and heal yourself. And relationships
Yeah.
matter. So real life relationships, not just online
Yeah.
relationships. And with that, all I can say is I hope to meet you in real
Likewise.
life in the near future. And I want to thank you again for your bravery. Thank your husband,
Shireen.
Martine, and
Shireen.
Shireen.
It's okay.
Sorry, apologies. And we'll
Thank
be in
you.
touch soon.
Bye.
So thank you. Bye. Steve Hassan here. You know, it's been decades since my family rescued me from the Moonies. I've been at this for over 47 years. The need has never been greater. If you're able, please consider hitting the super thanks button below, and it'll help us to do better. Every penny will help us toward our goal of educating the planet about undue influence. Remember, it's your mind, only you should control it.